What if I told you that one of the internet's most viral Depression-era recipes is actually a lie? A few years ago, millions of people discovered water pie, supposedly a desperate invention from the Great Depression when families had nothing but water, sugar, and hope. The story went viral. Bloggers made it. YouTubers filmed it. Everyone claimed it was the ultimate symbol of American resilience during hard times. There's just one problem. I couldn't find a single recipe from the Great Depression. Not one. So where did water pie really come from? And more importantly, can a pie made mostly of water actually taste good? Or is this just internet folklore gone too far? Stay with me, because we're about to solve a culinary mystery that spans over a century. Let's talk about what the internet got wrong. The story everyone loves to tell goes like this. During the Great Depression of the 1930s, when families were starving and couldn't afford basic ingredients like milk and eggs, some genius grandmother invented water pie, a miracle dessert made from practically nothing. It's a beautiful story, heartwarming, the kind of tale that makes you believe in human ingenuity and the unbreakable American spirit. It's also not true. Here's what should have been the first red flag. If water pie was truly invented during the Great Depression, where are all the recipes? The 1930s weren't the dark ages. Newspapers were everywhere, printing thousands of recipes every single week. Cookbooks were being published. Food columns were incredibly popular. So I started searching, and searching, and searching. I scoured digital newspaper archives containing tens of thousands of publications from the Depression era. I dug through period cookbooks. I looked everywhere a recipe from that time might logically appear. Nothing. Absolutely nothing labeled water pie from the 1930s. But then I found something interesting, a letter to the editor from 1982. A woman named Dolores Stone wrote, "Back in 1936 in Cordell, Oklahoma, my grandmother made something called water pie for her 10 kids. It was made with sugar, water, and spices in a pie shell. I would love to hear from anyone who might know about this recipe." So the pie did exist during the Depression. Dolores's grandmother made it. But here's the critical detail. Her grandmother didn't invent it. She was making something that already existed, something she'd learned from somewhere else. But where? Just when I was about to give up, I discovered a blog called History Reheated where the author had the exact same frustration I did, and she'd actually found something. 2 water pie recipes, neither from the Great Depression. The first one, from 1908. The second, from the 1880s. Let that sink in for a moment. Water pie existed at least 50 years before the Depression, possibly longer. The entire internet origin story was backwards. The 1908 recipe comes from the Fulton Weekly Gazette in Fulton, Missouri, submitted by Mrs. Hollis Cruz to the newspaper's cooking contest. Here's what she wrote. Water pie. 1 cup sugar, 2 tablespoons of flour mixed well with sugar. Then add half a cup of hot water, lump of butter, and flavoring. Cook until it becomes thick, then pour into your prepared paste and bake slowly. Notice something different from the viral modern versions? Mrs. Cruz cooks the filling first, creating a thickened mixture before adding it to the pie shell. Most internet recipes just dump everything raw into the crust and hope for the best. But the real revelation came from the 1886 recipe, which explicitly states this pie is a good substitute for custard pie when milk is scarce. There it is. Water pie isn't some romantic Depression invention. It's a practical substitution recipe, designed for times when dairy was expensive or unavailable. So if water pie wasn't invented during the Great Depression, why did people need it in the 1880s and early 1900s? Because America has always had hard times. We just tend to remember some more than others. While the 1929 stock market crash and subsequent depression loom large in our cultural memory, the late 19th century was absolutely brutal for most Americans. The Long Depression started with the Panic of 1873, following a post-Civil War speculative bubble that burst spectacularly. That depression lasted until 1879, or arguably until 1899, because during those 20 years, the country experienced a recession roughly every year to 18 months. It was the Gilded Age, which sounds fancy until you realize it was called that, because a thin layer of gold covered a lot of suffering underneath. A few ultra-rich people at the top were building mansions and industrial empires. Everyone else was trying to figure out how to eat. Then, right around the time our 1908 recipe appeared, another economic collapse hit. The Panic of 1907, triggered by a run on the Knickerbocker Trust Company. This eventually led to the creation of the Federal Reserve System, but not before making life considerably harder for ordinary Americans. An 1889 article from the Florida Agriculturalist captures this perfectly. Two women are discussing economical recipes, and one says, "I skip all your recipes which call for cream and over 3 eggs. Downright cream is not to be had in these parts, and a pudding or pie with more than 3 eggs for an ordinary family is a sin." When the other woman shares the water pie recipe, her friend responds, "I used to make just such pies and custards when I first came to Florida over 20 years ago. It was almost before the days of condensed milk. At least it was very high in price. And as to getting a pint of milk from these fractious Florida cows was to pay pretty dearly for it. Oh, we did have a hard time the first year or two." This is the real story of water pie. Not a romantic tale of Depression-era ingenuity, but a practical solution to chronic economic hardship that plagued working-class Americans for decades. Here's a question that might seem obvious now, but would have been absurd to ask in 1908. If people couldn't afford proper ingredients, why make pie at all? I mean, I like pie as much as the next person, but I wouldn't call it essential. It's a treat, a luxury, something for special occasions. Except in early 20th century America, pie wasn't optional. It was fundamental. In 1907, it was written that in no other country or at any other time has the demand for good baked stuffs been so great as it is at the present time in this country. Let me put this in perspective. In 1899, New York City alone consumed 80 million full-size pies per year. That's over 23 pies per person per year, and that number only counts manufactured pies from the 21 pie-making factories surrounding the city, not homemade pies. 21 pie factories. For one city, pie was so important that it spawned monopolies. There was the Steel Trust, controlling American steel production, the Railroad Trust, controlling transportation, and the Pie Trust, the American Pastry and Manufacturing Company, which owned 19 of those 21 pie factories. One contemporary article declared, "The pie is an article of necessity in every household, as much so as the bed or the cooking stove. Other dishes have come and gone to suit the fickle whims of the public, but pie remains. It is hallowed by maternal associations and family memories." Another article went even harder, proclaiming that a trust in pie should be as abhorrent to the American people as a trust in family Bibles or family trees. Pie wasn't just food, it was identity. It was culture. It was American. Of course, not everyone was thrilled about America's pie obsession. Rudyard Kipling, yes, the guy who wrote the Jungle Book, absolutely despised American pie culture. While living in New England, he wrote, "I live within the Great Pie Belt. It extends through the New England states and through northern New York. Pie is a habit all over the eastern states. In the West, it is a debauch. Have you ever considered the moral and physical condition of a people which eats pie for breakfast, pie for dinner, pie for supper? Talk about judgmental." But Kipling wasn't alone. In 1902, New York Times columnist Kate Masterson wrote an article titled "The Great American Pie" that seemed to absolutely eviscerate pie culture. Pie really is an American evil. It is not only notoriously unhealthy, but it lacks all those subtle distinctions which should mark all foods, especially the dessert. She went on to declare that pie was immoral and compared it to cigar smoke, paint, and turpentine. She claimed that no great man was ever fond of pie. No important work was ever consummated on a pie diet. Pie is a clog on the spirit and a ball and chain on the imagination. Pretty harsh, right? Here's the twist. Kate Masterson was one of the few successful female journalists of her era, and she was also a satirist. She wasn't actually attacking pie. She was mocking the elitist snobs who looked down on working-class Americans for eating pie. The pie debate was really about class. Upper-class food critics condemned pie because it was associated with working people, with immigrants, with the masses cramming themselves in a cafeteria lunch counters for a cheap, filling meal. Water pie sits right at the intersection of this cultural moment. A working-class food, made even cheaper out of necessity, yet still maintaining the form and dignity of proper pie. So enough history. Let's talk about how you actually make this thing. For the crust, I'm using a period-appropriate recipe from Fannie Farmer's 1908 Boston Cooking School cookbook, one of the most popular cookbooks of the era. It's a hybrid crust using both lard and butter, which creates incredible flakiness. You'll need a 1/4 cup lard, or shortening, a 1/4 cup butter, 1½ cups flour, 1/2 teaspoon salt, ice cold water. The technique is unusual. You cut the lard into the flour first, add just enough water to bring it together, then fold in chunks of cold butter, creating something like a rough puff pastry. Chill it for 30 minutes, roll out, line your pie dish, and blind bake it at 425 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 minutes with pie weights, then another 5 to 6 minutes without. For the filling, 1 cup sugar, 2 tablespoons flour, 4 tablespoons butter, 3/4 cup warm water, 1/4 teaspoon nutmeg, 1 and 1/2 teaspoons vanilla. Mix the sugar and flour in a saucepan, add everything else, and cook over medium heat until it thickens, just a few minutes. Pour this into your cooled pie crust. Bake at 425 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 minutes, then drop to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and bake another 45 minutes. Here's the weird part. Unlike a traditional custard with eggs that sets in the oven, water pie stays liquid while hot. It only firms up as it cools, which takes several hours. You basically just have to trust the process. After cooling completely, the transformation is remarkable. The butter congeals on top, creating a rich layer, while the sugar-water mixture firms up into something that genuinely resembles custard. The taste? Surprisingly good. You get the nutmeg and vanilla coming through clearly, which makes sense because those are literally the only flavors besides sugar. That's why your choice of flavoring is crucial. You could go with lemon for a lemon meringue vibe, add cinnamon and allspice for a spice pie, or experiment with whatever extract you have available. The butter adds genuine richness. The texture is firm but yielding, similar to a pecan pie filling. That slightly gloopy, semi-set consistency that some people absolutely love. The crust, meanwhile, is spectacularly flaky and buttery, with a caramelized ring where the water evaporated during baking. Is it as good as a proper custard pie made with cream and eggs? No, obviously not. But that's not the point. The point is that when you couldn't afford cream and eggs, this gave you something that felt like luxury, that maintained the cultural ritual of pie, that let you put dessert on the table with dignity. So here's what we learned today. The internet loves a good Depression-era story, even when that story is completely wrong. Water pie wasn't invented during the Great Depression. It was invented at least 50 years earlier, during a different period of economic hardship that we've largely forgotten. It survived through multiple economic collapses, was almost certainly made during the Depression by people like Dolores Stone's grandmother, and then disappeared from our collective memory until the internet rediscovered it and invented a fake origin story. But here's what's true. Water pie represents something real and important about American history. It shows us that economic hardship wasn't a one-time event, but a recurring reality for working-class families. It reveals how food can be both practical and meaningful, how people found ways to maintain tradition and dignity even when resources were scarce. And honestly, it's pretty damn good. If you're looking for an unusual Thanksgiving dessert, or you just want to make something that connects you to generations of Americans who made do with what they had, water pie is worth trying. It's easy, it's cheap, and it's got a hell of a story, even if that story is different than what the internet told you. The past is full of surprises. Sometimes the truth is even better than the legend. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to have another slice. Because unlike those pie snobs of the early 1900s, I believe great things can absolutely be accomplished on a pie diet. Until next time, keep questioning what you read online, keep exploring culinary history, and keep tasting the past.